all that sacrifice and all those staying up those hours and all that, trying to be clandestine at work and do business, to get out, that equaled this. And I will never, ever regret any of it. I love it for everything I ever dreamed about. I'm doing right now, and I want to grow it bigger and bigger, and I want to help more people do the same, because I believe it's achievable. But you have to believe it. You can't just go, oh, people can't achieve that dream anymore. It's just not possible. And I'm like, it's more possible than ever right now in the world we're in. We're all connected. It's not like it was when I got out of college. It's so much better, and this is worth doing.
Welcome to the BoldBrush Show, where we believe that fortune favors the bold. Brush. My name is Laura Ringlebear, and I'm your host. For those of you who are new to the podcast, we are a podcast that covers art marketing techniques and all sorts of business tips, specifically to help artists learn to better sell their work. We interview artists at all stages of their careers, as well as others who are in careers tied to the art world in order to hear their advice and insights. On today's episode, we interviewed Eric Armusik, a representational painter with a passion for complex narrative paintings who is seeking to recreate and celebrate the human experience through large Renaissance-style works. We spoke about the challenges he faced as a budding representational artist in a time when realism was considered to be dead, his incredible passion project in which he's creating 40 paintings depicting scenes of Dante's Inferno, how he sacrificed sleep in order to build his painting career at the same time as having a day job, which he was able to quit, and why believing in yourself to take those steps to grow in your career will pay off in the end for you as well. Finally, we discuss how you can become one of Eric's students and learn directly from him, from the basics of painting to helping you grow your artistic career. Hello, Eric, and welcome to the BoldBrush Show. How are you today?
Fantastic. Very much. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you today. I'm really, really excited about all of it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you because you are doing something that very few people actually, even in the realism world, do, which is tackling immense paintings, which, as a realist painter myself, you always hear from people like, oh, why would you make gigantic paintings? Like, who has the wall space? But I think, sometimes it's worth being, like you had said earlier in our previous conversation, being a renegade and just, going
Right.
against the system and letting yourself break that glass ceiling.
Sure.
But before we get into that, do you mind giving us a little bit about your background, who you are, what you do?
Sure. I've been in this business for about 30 years now, as of next year, I believe, as a professional. I have, during that time, drawn and painted. I have taught for about 20 years, students all around the world to do representational and figurative artwork. During that time, I probably failed more than most people on my own, trying to establish a brand, trying to establish my career in a changing industry where it was very traditional before the internet. And so many new opportunities have grown since then. And it's enabled me to sell hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of artwork on my own without galleries. And in the last 7 years, I have been embarked upon a epic journey painting Dante's Inferno. I may progress into the rest of the Divine Comedy, but as it is now, I've been painting 40 paintings for the Inferno that encompass all the cantos. And as it stands now, I'm at painting 15 out of the 40. Each one of them is a 4-foot by 5-foot panel on a Lumicomp that I've been painting on, which is a Jerry's Argorama product. And I've had just a life-changing experience while doing it, and I'm very happy to share that with everybody today.
Wonderful. Yeah. And again, it's such an incredible project to be tackling. Because it really is, a passion project for you. It is not something that someone like one day told you like, oh, you should do this. For you, it was really like bringing that mysticism and wonder back into painting that you get when you enter a Renaissance church or a Baroque church and you see these immense, gorgeous paintings that are larger than life. And that's an incredible project to be doing, honestly.
It certainly is. And we've spoken earlier about spending my time in Italy and your time in Italy, and just seeing that kind of level of artwork is so awe-inspiring. And I think for me, it really connected with my upbringing. I grew up in the Northeast section of Pennsylvania, mining town kind of area, not very particularly nice in a lot of the areas, especially the town I lived in, a town called Ashley. A lot of old mining breakers and, these huge mountains of column and all this. It was just very dismal. But down at the bottom of every street, it seemed there was a beautiful Catholic church. And you would walk into these buildings that were built, maybe 100 years prior to my being born. And they were gorgeous inside. It was like walking into a museum. The stained glass, the ceilings, the walls, the altar, everything was just immaculately adorned with paintings and sculptures and things like that. So as a kid, you're sitting there kneeling and just staring everywhere, and my mind would just wander all over the place and see things. And I didn't have a background in art per se until college. Really, I didn't have any training until I entered Penn State University at age 17 or whatever it was at that time, to get some training and get art historical background and stuff of the things I was seeing. And once that happened, it started to ignite everything. I was like, oh, I'm used to seeing that. I know what that is now. And, the history of maybe I think it was the Transfiguration, was on the ceiling of the church that I was at. And then you see Raphael's version of it, and you say, oh, okay, that's where that's from, and all those things connected. And I think that, that experience for me was very transformative. So yeah, that's kind of growing out of all of that really kind of engaged and told me exactly where I was going as an artist, I think, at that point. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I resonate very much with your experience because I was of course raised Catholic.
mhm.
And I was also the kid who was not paying attention to the sermon. I was just looking at the gorgeous paintings. I wonder if that's like something that
It's an art
affects
thing.
us. Yeah, it's incredible. Just visiting I mean, a Catholic church in general. They're very decorated. They're
Mhm.
very
A
beautiful.
lot
And of
more.
course, the striking iconography
Right.
is one of the things that really gets you when you walk in. Um
Yeah, it, it
yeah.
it really affects me even now, being in this business for as many years as I have.
Mhm.
Because as a kid, I saw that old traditional side, and it's kind of mirrored the same with the art world, how in the churches in the last like 50 to 70 years look totally boring and not as inspiring,
Yeah.
and I kind of sat there, later on going to some other churches in my adulthood, and I'm like, this looks like a gymnasium. Like, this doesn't
Mhm.
inspire me at all. Like, I want to see all those beautiful things, and I think that's what and kind of connecting me with this too, and going, well, if I could do it, why wouldn't I do it?
Mhm. Mhm. Exactly.
My
Um,
contribution to not complaining about the problem, but fixing the problem, maybe.
yes, exactly. And there's also something, I'm not particularly, aside, like if you step aside from religion, right? Even
Mhm.
just these images on their own, they it's almost like they speak to a higher level of like mysticism, whether or not you know
Right,
anything about the religion. Like there's
right.
something magical about them. And that's the same feeling you get when you walk into like a church in Rome or a church
Oh
in
yeah,
Florence, where it's just awe-inspiring, even if it's not,
right,
for someone, like even if it's for someone who's more secular, right? It's still
right.
like, wow. Um, which,
It's true.
yeah, which
I've
speaks a
seen
lot.
that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I to that point. I'm sorry to
Oh, you're
over
good.
talk, but to that point, I mean, it's so interesting even sharing what I do because I still do practice. My faith is very important to me, but I
Hmm.
share it to most people who have nothing to do with the faith, have nothing to do with really any Christianity or anything. But when you're able to share something that communicates some kind of beauty to people, I transcend all that. And it's
Hmm.
it's very interesting. Like at first I would almost be, well, maybe should I be showing this? Is that the audience? But it never has really affected me all that much. There's so many people that are just I think that the great part about being an artist, even hundreds of years ago, is that we put a visual communication out to people, and I think that says something more than what we're dealing with today, even where some art is conceptual in nature and very selfish and doesn't communicate to everybody. But real art did before people could even communicate, and the language wasn't there. They couldn't read or write, but they could see something and understand it visually. And I think
Mhm.
that still has an importance in our art world today. It's so important. Like if you can communicate with whatever you're doing to a larger audience, I mean, I've said it many times, I'd rather people love or hate my art because they'll have the chance to by looking at it, not by what I'm going to tell them. They can say absolutely, it moved me, or I can't stand that kind of thing. But you're giving them a chance to make their own decisions that don't have my bias to it. So
Exactly. Yeah,
interesting.
because it's allowing the image to speak to them directly.
Right.
Which, you know, to your point about, people not even being able to read or write before, in the time of the Renaissance, it was very uncommon.
Hmm.
Um, they could only understand through images. And that's also how we
Hmm.
fundamentally understand the world around us.
Definitely.
Which is wonderful. But you mentioned something interesting, which is that you never really thought about being an artist until much later. But did you feel like maybe as a child you were kind of interested in it, or?
Yeah, I definitely, as a child, I was always drawing. So I knew from a very early age. I laughed because I would have books in my on my bookshelf, and I would pull them down, and the first few pages were blank. So I would sit there thinking, well, I can draw on these because there's no words on it. So I had all these books in my bookshelf. My mother would like lost her mind when she saw them years later. But I would just draw and sketch because I didn't have a sketch pad or anything. And, I had pencils, maybe crayons as a young kid, but I'd be drawing, cookies and dinosaurs and sharks and, spacemen, whatever it was. I had no idea, but I was always the person that was drawing. So even in kindergarten, was winning art competitions and things like that. But I guess I knew I would be an artist, but I had no training other than what I was able to do, and it was enough to win contests in school and stuff like that. But even getting into college, I got rejected from one university. It had an art test or something like that, and
Mhm.
I had no background in anything. I couldn't draw or paint or couldn't tell you any art historical things. Um, but it was in college that I had the opportunity to learn figure drawing first, and then painting at age 20. I picked up a paintbrush finally, and I think that really kind of solidified everything. I mean, figure drawing work was super important. Started doing that a little earlier in college, and it was just I thought this is what I'm doing. I know this is what I want to do, and then paint just it was everything to me. I was like totally immersed in that, but I can remember as a kid. I mean, I think what was his name? Bill Alexander had the painting show on PBS. It was like Bob
Mhm.
Ross's teacher or whatever
Yes.
it was. I can remember like literally trying. I actually had an art pad at like age 10, and I'm sitting there trying to work along with him with some colored pencils on a huge
Oh.
piece of paper, trying to draw while he's painting. And I'm like, this guy's crazy. He's working so fast. Like I can't keep up with him trying to shade and stuff. I'm like, I
Oh.
didn't have anything. So I was kind of struggling. So when I work with a lot of people now that are in these horrible situations, sometimes financially and everything else, I'm like, let's just work with whatever you have. We'll make it work together, and just find what you can to just at least get some kind of start. Because I know what that's like. It was very difficult for me, but the experience that I got at that point, I've said it to you before, like I got the introduction to painting, but I didn't get the how do you paint that situation. It was so they put the brush in my hand, but it wasn't so much that they taught me what to do with it. So
Mhm.
there was fortunately I had some art history and then studying in Italy for a while and drawing a lot, from the things that inspired me was that really kind of helped usher things along for me to kind of take this whole journey forward as a professional and really spending time training and training and training and practicing hundreds of thousands of hours probably at this point,
Yeah.
and but that was how I had to go forward. And But I guess it was a conglomeration of all those small experiences that, got me where I am today, and the determination of all of it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned also, and we were talking about this earlier, how, just being given that brush and not getting an education in like how do you render, how do you turn
right.
form, how do you draw? Um, and you started, you know, painting and drawing and studying this in a time where realism was considered long gone and dead. I mean, sure, there were
Right.
people underground, right? Very few
Hmm.
people though who were trying to maintain the tradition.
Right.
And of course, those ateliers started popping up maybe in like the early to mid 2000s.
Yep.
But you started in a particularly difficult time, and I
Right.
commend you because the institutional pushback can be so challenging to work with. And also,
It
even
was.
pushback from the people around you who are also artists who maybe
Hmm.
even look down on realism for
Hmm.
whatever
Very
reason.
much.
Yeah, that must have been really hard to deal with. How did you cope with that?
It was pretty tough. I guess deep inside, I mean, you kind of had to have a maverick spirit.
Mhm.
You kind of had to be the kid who rebelled in school, which I already was. I was kind of a person that didn't like to follow the mainstream thing, whatever it was. Like everybody's supposed to do this. Well, I'm going to go over here and do that. I felt that way deep inside, but it was difficult. I mean, I had one professor that I really looked up to say that, if I was to do this particular thing I wanted to do, I would never have a career. And this was in a big critique with a lot of other professors around and everybody kind of laughing about it. And mind you, at one moment I'm showing this piece of art that I spent three months working on, which was like a 6 foot by 8 foot painting. And somebody just came in the room. I don't know if they did performance art or something. They're an artist, but they're doing or a painter, but they're doing performance art, and everybody's going crazy for that 10 minutes, or whatever they spent doing their thing. And so I felt like I was in kind of a crazy world, like like going, gosh, here I am, and I'm getting closer to graduating. That's the kind of advice I got. So, the first few years of getting into the profession, here I am trying to like toe the line in some way. Maybe it's me, maybe I'm not getting it, and so it was very hard. I'd say probably the first 2 or 3 years of my professional career were wasted just trying to appease other people's tastes, maybe, and asking, hey, what am I doing wrong? All this kind of stuff. When deep inside I had that spirit in me. I wanted to do the things I wanted to do. Maybe I just didn't have the right direction and things like that at the time. And it wasn't until after that point I was married right out of school, to love my life, and she's a brilliant writer herself. And she basically told me one day that she said, if I had your talent, I would do whatever I wanted. Why would you be, holding yourself back? And she was so right. And she's still the only person on earth I trust, because she's always been there for me, and I will always be there for her because she's very honest and will tell me that. And it was almost like I got permission to just start listening to my heart again. And, I feel that deeply when I work with other students now, because it doesn't matter what age they are. Maybe they're, 18 years old, or even before that, or mid-career, or even later in life, getting a chance to try again. All of those people, they make me realize who I was at that moment. And I go, I don't want them to experience that. I don't want them to waste any time on this earth trying to appease other people. You'll never make everybody happy. You've got to make yourself happy first, and go after what it is you believe in.
Mhm.
And that's one of the only regrets I had early on is, my confidence. I had confidence, but it could be shaken quite easily. And then add on any kind of failure you have in your life, and then all of a sudden your mind is telling you that, yeah, they're right. Oh my gosh, they have some insight into my life that I don't. And it's
Yeah.
it's it's so ridiculous to even think that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny because, for you, you were reflecting on yourself like you were the failure, when in actuality, the institution failed you. in many
Yes,
ways. And I'm
very
so
much.
happy that, you're the love of your life, of course, your wife was
Hmm.
able to provide that support and that, like kind of like a slap in the face saying, no, just do
Right.
it. Like, who cares?
Yeah,
You can do whatever the heck you want in your life.
exactly.
And of course, here you are, and now you have your students, you're working on a massive project, and you've been
Right.
at this for a very long time.
Mhm.
And you can definitely say, I have no regrets except for, maybe not starting sooner, which
Right.
I think that's a very common regret with people
Totally.
who, prevent themselves from pursuing the things that they love. But it's very inspiring because
Right.
I resonate a lot actually with your situation because even though, we're now in a time where realism is more accepted, there's still pushback in
Yes.
schools, in universities, colleges, etc. Like I got a lot of pushback in high school in my art classes as
Hmm.
well. So I resonate with that. And also with that feeling of who cares? I'm gonna do it
Right.
anyway.
Right.
My mom, of course, was one of the people who were like, "Ooh, don't do that." And I was like, "I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you, mom." So
It's
yeah,
so
you just have
true.
to keep going, man. And
Right.
then you picked recently, of course, this insanely influential thing, which is Dante's Inferno. And or the Divine Comedy, of course, because
Hmm.
that's all of it.
The whole thing. Yeah.
Yes. And I'm curious to know why specifically the Divine Comedy? Why did you decide to dive into that instead of other, stories from the Renaissance?
Hmm. Uh, well, maybe it was a little bit of that time I spent in Italy. So
Mm.
that Dante Alighieri inspiration may have found its way through because I love some of my greatest inspirations are Italian art, 17th century work, Caravaggio, Artemisia Gentileschi, all these great artists. So it may have been a little bit of Italian influence. I did read uh, um, the first time I read the Divine Comedy was right after college. I had taken some time right after school and just kind of tried to find out where my work was going. I was thinking at the time I was going to go into grad school, but I was trying to read through it, and I remember getting this copy of it. My mother had bought me a book of it, and I was looking at it, I'm reading all this amazing like visual things in my head. So much is going on, and this book was horribly illustrated. I don't even want to say the artist because I don't want to put him down or anything, but it was just terrible. It looked like he spent 5 minutes, just scratching some things. They were like barely sketches. And I'm looking at this whole book and I'm thinking, that's what you got out of this. I'm just feeling, I just had moved back to the States after being in Italy for a semester. And after seeing all that art everywhere, I mean, every room, every palace you go into, all the churches, and all that time that I spent, and I'm thinking, why aren't artists doing that work anymore? Why aren't we doing Sistine Chapel level artwork? You walk in there, and I spend hours in there just staring, and I'm like, this is years and decades of work. Why aren't artists doing that anymore? And I guess, deep inside, I was thinking, I really want to paint this kind of work. But again, I was just entering into my professional career. I'd done some fairly large artwork at the time, but I hadn't really found my grounding yet, and understanding, where do I find models? Where do I find the inspiration? Where do I even get the knowledge? Because here I am, a kid reading this book and this poem, and I got a very cursory understanding of what it was. And so I guess at that point, I was still kind of figuring out life. And again, I ended up buying a house, getting married, buying a house, and restoring a house for 20 years. And so there was many things, building a family and all that. It kind of got shelved for a little while. And then I did a very big commission. Can't really talk in detail about it, but it was for a movie. It's something that got shelved for a little while, but it was a very large commission, and it was dealing with kind of damnation and stuff
Mm.
like that. And I painted it, and at the time, I was it was more directed, outside of my hands by the person who had commissioned it. And I thought, I got so much more I wanted to do with this, and I started thinking back to that whole idea of doing that project. And now, having been in that career for about 25 years, I have plenty of models I work with. I know people, I know materials, I know what to do. And so it's really started to click. So I ended up going on and finding, looking for someone who could guide me through this. And that person ended up being Dr. Christopher Kleinhens, who is a retired professor from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And he had taught Dante's work and a number of medieval authors' work for like 40 years. So we started our conversations right off from the very beginning. He's always been super respectful to me. I respect everything he's done. He's written dozens of books, I think, on the subject, academic level stuff. And he's been so instrumental in helping me figure out how to accurately portray this, because I don't want it to be Eric Armusik's version of Dante's Inferno. I want it to be a good, very well-educated version of that, something that would be very, that Dante himself would be happy to see come to life. So, and that way it could be taught if it had to be used in educational settings, maybe high school, college, whatever. It could be used in that, and it's kind of our goal to do that as well. He wants to put out more of an academic book that would use my illustrations. I plan on, when the series is over, doing a book with the two of us, a very large art book that will be narrated by him. So I think that combined would be great. But we're going to exhibit the work as well. So imagine 40 paintings that are 4 foot by 5 foot in a room. That's like 160 feet of paintings, just if you were to bump them up to each other. It's going to transform the room into that entire space into, the Inferno. And I think at that scale and that drama, how incredible that experience could be walking through that. And I kind of laugh sometimes because it's like, if it understands, how the Inferno begins is basically Virgil, Beatrice, to guide Dante through the Inferno. So he essentially starts at the Inferno, goes through all the levels of that, comes out, goes through the purgatory, goes through all the levels of that, and ends up in heaven. So it's like, in order to get to heaven, he has to go through hell. So he has to go through all the levels of hell and understand it. And during that time, it transforms him. He becomes somebody completely different until he eventually ends up in heaven and is reunited in Beatrice, and she takes him through the rest of the Paradiso. But it was almost the same way with Dr. Kleinhans and I, where I'm essentially Dante in the wilderness in the beginning, not knowing anything. And he's this Virgil character, and he led me through the last 7 years to get where I am now. And it's not just in painting all this and embarking on this myself. People need to understand it's much more than just getting in the studio and painting. I mean, I do what I do to provide a living for my family. So I have a family of 5 that I support with just my artwork. I'm the only one. My wife is home with our children, and she's a writer. So we work together on building this business to provide for a family. So it is a business of commerce. So you have to put in the work to do that. So try doing an immense project on top of that with students, with all the marketing you have to do, with large amount of commissions like the one that's behind me here. It's a very, very busy life. And so in the last 7 years, I've produced 15 out of the 40 paintings so far. I'm really looking to push a lot harder, maybe by the end of the year, to get 20 done. So I'm at least at the halfway point. But it was very much like his struggles. A number of struggles, even aside from the pandemic and things like that in my own life, getting through to this point. So you kind of look back and say, wow, that was amazing, that journey, going through all of that. But I wouldn't exchange it for the world. It's one of those moments I just, you point to the cloud and say, I want to get that. I want to achieve that. So that was the hard, I know it was way beyond what I've ever done before, I might not even be capable of doing, but you have to shoot that high if you're going to do something great. And I think it's exactly the size it needs to be to stretch me, even at 30 years into this business. It needs to be unachievable, that you need to force yourself that hard to change and to grow and evolve. So That's pretty much the story.
Yeah. Oh my God. And you bring up such excellent points. Specifically the one that really just it makes me so happy you say it is, you know, I doubt there is a single creative person out there who has ever regretted embarking on a massive project because it is a transformational thing. And I actually wanted to ask you, you have 15 paintings done, you have another 25 essentially. Do you
Mhm.
find that the you that you were when you started that first painting is different from the you that you are now? How are you
Oh yes.
also transforming yourself? Kind of like how Dante
Oh yes.
was.
It definitely is. I feel that it, you feel very excited that you've achieved something, but there's something more humbling about all of it, because you see that there's sacrifice involved. You see, what didn't go right, what forced you to get back in there and work again. You see all the people that at the beginning that said you couldn't do it, or someone said something insulting or put you off your game maybe a little bit here and there. You saw all the kinds of struggles that can come up when you decide to embark on something like this. I think even when I achieve it, as I said, I will definitely be different. But I don't feel like at this point even there's like a sense of boasting. It's almost humbling that you can make it, and I think that's kind of the character you see in Dante, and I see myself in that. There's
Mhm.
points in the Inferno where he's confused, he's afraid. There's even one point Virgil's afraid, in a situation it's they don't even know if they're going to get through a certain point. You go through that, and it makes you stronger. And just like some of the other struggles I had even before I started this whole epic series, just dealing with the financial collapse in 2008 and trying to keep a business going while the world's falling apart around you. I mean, it makes you into a different person when you confront adversity, or that the situations where people say give up, you're not going to do it, you're never going to make it. It's just like making steel. It makes you stronger. You got to go into the fire to be able to be made stronger. And I try to, at least more than anything, I wanted to communicate is to other artists that you have to go through those moments. If there is no getting out alive in life, we're all going to
Yeah.
die. You're all going to go through something. But to live your life in such a way that you're like, well, I don't want to fail. Well, failure is about is the most important thing in all this, because you through failure you learn to be stronger. You get tougher skin. You get more determination. You look for answers when things aren't working well. You will find things in the midst of being absolutely confused and worried. You'll become more resourceful. And I love to teach that, and I love to help people build up, their careers, and to be ready to overcome those setbacks, because everybody's going to get them. If you want it in this business, even if you want to just sell a little bit, you're going to confront adversity, and you have to be ready to handle that pressure and that stress. And I guess that's why I'm very glad to go through all of this, and kind of see the worst sides of it. Sometimes I look at some of the worst things that have happened in my business, and they have been many. And I am thankful for them, because they were more important than the huge painting sales that I made, the biggest numbers that I did as just a individual selling my artwork. Those are great moments. The things that I overcame are so much bigger, and I'm thankful for them. So that's kind of how I feel about this project, and probably every part of my career.
Yeah, yeah, and it's extremely inspiring. And it makes me wonder also, because you've been in this industry for a long time, and even through some of the hardest economic moments. Um, how was it for you to go from student to full-time artist? What was that transition like for you?
um, right out of school, like as I said, I had a little bit of a kind of a maverick spirit. I wanted to succeed where everybody said I couldn't. But obviously, we're all confronted with the daily needs of having to provide for ourselves, and then eventually, in my case, a family of five. So I kind of had to go into the things that I knew that I could make money with at the time to support me. I tried doing something of an artistic situation I thought would have worked out, something that would have provided some income, and it didn't. So I had to kind of go into the crutch of my previous profession as a kid, working for my father in construction. So I worked with my dad from the time I was about 9 years old, all weekends, all my holidays and everything else. I spent a lot of time doing that. And that's a whole nother story of why I had to do it. Kind of as a kid, getting in trouble, did something bad and basically had to work for my father for about 2 years for free. But I learned a profession and it was very helpful for me. And I kind of stress this with a lot of people that I do consultations with and career advice and stuff is that, take every experience that you have in your life, doesn't matter if you think it's related, and see how that can give you unforeseen advantages in your career. So for me, I was a carpenter. I trimmed out houses, built, did concrete, did roofs, dug ditches. I mean, everything they needed me to do, I did. But I learned a lot of things about, working with framing wood and doing finish work. And later on in life, I was able to use that for building custom frames, doing large tabernacle frames, like I'm actually in the process of doing right now for a church. I have two of them I'm doing. But I relied on that for a little while. And then I was able to kind of get into a profession doing graphic design work for a company. And I had a little bit of experience with it in college. So I was kind of on the job training. So I was able to learn Photoshop and a bunch of other things. And while I was doing my day job, working for this, it was a craft company at first, and then a technology company I was working for. I said, I don't want to do this forever. I'm doing this for money now, some experience. So I built my business on the outside while I was working. So while I would work all day, I would come home, eat dinner, and then I would get in my studio and I would work like 5, 6 hours or so at night until like 2 in the morning. And I realized that that sacrifice of sleep was necessary because even if it was an extra hour or two each day, it was getting me that much farther out. So I got, kind of a parallel career running. I had my thing I had to do for money and my career was running at the same time. So in a number of years after it, I think it was probably about 6, 7 years after I really committed myself to doing it. I was in a position where I was in a very good job, being paid very well. And I left that job to become a full-time artist. And by that time, I had both careers running. It was like, stepping off an escalator right into another one. And I was right. There was no hiccups or anything. And I actually, that first year, I made more money in the art career that I moved into than where I was working. So that was another, where everybody was telling me, "You're crazy. What are you going to do? You're going to ruin your life, and you're going to lose all the benefits of working for a corporation." I couldn't wait to leave. You're right. And but I think the biggest advice, and I think I wrote a blog years ago for BoldBrush for this is I think it was like 10 reasons or things you should do to leave your job or whatever it was. But it was really committing myself in the end and going, if you're going to leave and your passion is to be in your career, don't be a model employee. Do what you have to get the employee thing done and to satisfy your boss and be everything else. But be kind of like a wallflower, be somebody who not going to bring a lot of attention to you because I spent all my time, I would take my lunch break sometimes and just go in a car and do marketing. I would be sneaking out to make calls to people to do commissions. I was even painting commissions on the steering wheel of my car in the parking lot, so all my friends are like, all the work buddies are like, "Hey, come out to go out to eat with all of us and be social." I'm like, "No, I don't want to be social. I like you guys, but I have this dream and I have to achieve it." And at the time I had, uh, two children and I was watching my daughter every day look at me in the door, the window there and seeing her dad hate this. I don't want to miss their lives. I want them to grow up in front of me. I want to be a good dad. I want to be home with my wife. I love being at home. I'm still to every day. I enjoy a nice hour or two coffee with my wife in the morning because it's the greatest part of my life, that all that sacrifice and all those staying up those hours and all that, trying to be clandestine at work and do business, to get out, that equaled this. And I will never ever regret any of it. I love it for everything I ever dreamed about. I'm doing right now, and I want to grow it bigger and bigger, and I want to help more people do the same, because I believe it's achievable. But you have to believe it. You can't just go, oh, people can't achieve that dream anymore. It's just not possible. And I'm like, it's more possible than ever right now in the world we're in. We're all connected. It's not like it was when I got out of college. It's so much better, and this is worth doing, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And actually, you read my mind because I was actually going to mention how, you did that in ooh, some of the hardest times to even be
Right,
attempting to sell paintings. That,
right,
with like phone books basically. And there, because the
right.
internet wasn't really like a thing. There wasn't like,
Yeah,
the ARC, there wasn't Figurativas,
right.
there wasn't all of these, opportunities that we
Oh,
have now.
definitely,
Oh my God. So I can imagine how fulfilling one it must have been for you to actually pull through. Because
totally,
today, like you said, it's so much easier. At BoldBrush, we inspire artists to inspire the world because creating art creates magic, and the world is currently in desperate need of magic. BoldBrush provides artists with free art marketing, creativity, and business ideas and information. This show is an example. We also offer written resources, articles, and a free monthly art contest open to all visual artists. We believe that fortune favors the bold brush. And if you believe that too, sign up completely free at boldbrushshow.com. That's BoldBrush show.com. The BoldBrush Show is sponsored by Faso. Now more than ever, it's crucial to have a website when you're an artist, especially if you want to be a professional in your career. Thankfully, with our special link, faso.com/podcast, you can make that come true and also get over 50% off your first year on your artist website. Yes, that's basically the price of 12 lattes in 1 year, which I think is a really great deal considering that you get sleek and beautiful website templates that are also mobile friendly, e-commerce, print on demand in certain countries, as well as access to our marketing center that has our brand new art marketing calendar. And the art marketing calendar is something that you won't get with our competitor. The art marketing calendar gives you day-by-day, step-by-step guides on what you should be doing today, right now, in order to get your artwork out there and seen by the right eyes so that you can make more sales this year. So if you want to change your life and actually meet your sales goal this year, then start now by going to our special link, faso.com/podcast. That's faso.com/podcast. It's like,
it
it's
is.
still hard, of course,
Right.
because we're in a strange economic situation right now worldwide.
Hmm.
But there are still people out there who are living from their work just like you.
Hmm.
And that brings me to a very good question, which is for you, having gone through that to today, experiencing the boom of,
Hmm.
the internet world and all of the
Hmm.
opportunities it affords us. What has been the most lucrative approach for you to market and sell your work?
Sure. Um, it's the realization that nobody buys something that they can't see. Now, that's very different from, when I left school, a lot of my friends ended up going right to New York City. That was the way to make it, was to go to the city because you had to be in a place, had to be there at the meetings, and you had to be there at the galas and talking with people and making connections. Um, Soon after, the internet model became the way that we all communicate. And for me, I moved into an area that it's a small town, 5,000 people, not very, very big, close enough to New York. I can get there in an hour or so, and I can get to Philly if I need to, wherever I need to go. Um, but that realization that, people aren't going to buy from you unless they know that what your art is. So it's our responsibility to really think of the internet every day as an opportunity to get in there and to share. I've said this before to a lot of people. What people don't understand about marketing is that we all have to do it. It doesn't matter who you are. Coca-Cola is the most recognized name in the world. All the languages in the world can say Coca-Cola to each other and they know what they're talking about. Now, why would Coca-Cola still be doing advertisements today? Why? Everybody knows them. Why do they need to keep doing it? It's because you need to keep marketing. You need to keep that name out there. You need to keep that brand recognition out there, and you need to get it out into the public square where people can see it and make a decision about it. So that's one big thing that for me, I realized that it had to be a habit, like just like brushing your teeth. You need every day to do some marketing, and you need to create that brand out there every day. And the only way you do it is by putting it out there as much as possible. So, like even when people were trying to, they were trying to sell the whole idea of the Intel logo, and you see that logo go on the screen. And what do you hear afterwards? You hear those couple of notes that come after it. How many times did it take before people understood that that sound meant Intel? Not one time, not 10 times maybe, but so many times over time that people recognize it. It's the same reason why a lot of artists fail at advertising a magazine one time. I did it. I was that foolish to believe that if I put my art in one magazine one time, people are just going to come run into me and, oh my gosh, I saw your work in the magazine. Guess what? There's tons of people in those magazines. To stand out, you need to do it consistently. And I think that I started thinking after a while, and I think it's great at first. I encourage it to do a lot of group shows with people and to get your artwork out there. But at some point, you need to start thinking like an individual, and you need to start preparing yourself for creating opportunities where you can be the star, where you can be the only person in the room, and sharing your work in such a way that it gets out there consistently as a single item. Not like even like in a magazine where there's so many, a group of people showing. People are just going to glance by all of that, or even in a group show they're going to go right by it. But if you create some kind of, uniqueness around what you're doing and put it out there consistently, you will become something that has a lot more of a spotlight on it. And you need to find something that you believe in, something that's very close to your soul, something that individually you uh, resonate with completely, that you're willing to stand up for and fight. Like we're not supposed to be people like you see some of these infomercials like, hey, become a real estate guy or something, or sell something that's not you. You know
Mhm.
how quickly people give up on that stuff? If you're not finding who you are as an artist and creating something that you truly enjoy, that you're willing to fight for every day, you're willing to make that your habit, you're going to go nowhere. So, you got to really start thinking about that thing, and stop overthinking the fact that you need to be original or unique or anything like that. Or unique is a word I'm using for something else, but that you got to do something so different that everybody's going to go, wow, the most original person I've ever seen. We're gonna give you everything, all the attention, all the money, and everything else. That's just not going to happen. You need to just think of yourself as creating a brand every day, just like Coca-Cola, just like anybody else. You're carving a niche into the market by doing what you do best. And I think the sooner you realize that, that's about lucrative. That's a longevity of being lucrative. Don't think about, a couple of years ago with the banana with the duct tape on the wall. All of a sudden, everybody's painting, versions of that, doing artwork about that.
Mhm.
It's funny, but it's a one-liner. It's a joke. It's
Yes.
a one-line kind of thing. Or when a movie comes out and everybody starts painting or drawing the particular character, it's great. I mean, I'm not saying that's not something that's fun, and I hope you sell that work and stuff. That's great, but it's a one-liner. You need to think about longevity, and you need to think about building something bigger and being consistent. So that's where the word lucrative, I think, is applied best, is when you start thinking long term, and you could do that on day one.
Yes. Wow. You bring up so many wonderful points because for one, it's like the whole idea of being original. I think, that's first of all, it's a scam. There's nothing new under
Yep.
the sun.
True.
Um, I oftentimes, I've thought about an idea for a painting and it turns out, oh, someone did it, but like maybe 500 years ago, or maybe someone did it yesterday.
Right.
So there's truly nothing new. So that already
Hmm.
relieves a lot of pressure, like just do whatever the hell you want.
Right.
Um, and then you also brought up an excellent point with, making work that gets you up in the morning, basically. Like I
Hmm.
find that the work itself should be something that like you get up in the morning and it's the first thing you want to do.
Right.
Um, because it excites you, because, it doesn't feel heavy. I mean, sure, it can be really heavy, but not in the way of like making you emotionally exhausted, right? It's something that, oh, I'm so excited that like, obviously I have to rest, but I want to
Right,
get up in the morning, like bright and early and get it done. Um, and the final point that I love that you brought up is, the timelessness aspect of the work. Yes, it's fine
right,
to follow these trends, especially if it's like, oh, I really love this show and I'm just going to do like a one-off.
right.
But ensuring that your work is, I guess it speaks to something higher than just, oh, this banana on the wall, which is one
Right.
moment in time that of course we're going to remember forever as
Hmm.
an extremely embarrassing moment in the art world, in my
Right.
opinion.
There
But
are many.
oh my God, yes. But creating something, and this ties in so well to what you're doing, with the church paintings and also with Dante's Inferno, creating with timelessness in mind, these
Right.
narratives and these stories that bring us all together as a people, or images that inspire us regardless of religion, which
Yep.
is a much much higher goal, and much
Hmm.
more fulfilling
Very much.
personally,
Yeah,
like
it
how
is.
you mentioned, if it's something that is, important to you as well. It's like, oh,
Right.
that's like
Hmm.
triple whammy of everything you should be
Right.
doing. Which, I believe you even answered my next question, which was, do you believe that good work basically sells itself?
Yeah, and I thought about that, and I think there's a yes and no. I think there's a no component, which I always tell people all the time, and it's sad that this fact is very sad, is that in life we think that the person that's the best at what they do is the most successful. That's why we educate people. They say, okay, the more education you have, the more chance you have of success. But then there's, people from Harvard that, end up plummeting and can't pay their loans back. It's not the best thing that gets you the most success.
Mhm.
It's the person that markets it that wins. So a mildly talented person that markets really well is sadly going to beat the person that's super talented and does no marketing. It happens. Maybe there's exceptions to the rule sometimes, but that's the very sad fact. And I'm all for the person that's, the meritocracy of the person that's the best should win. They put all the work in, but you do have to put a marketing side into it. On the other side, I do believe that as an artist, like let's just say you're a mildly, a person who can mildly market themselves, certain pieces are going to get a lot more attention than others. I have painted some that have truly moved people and in a very short amount of time sold. And I'm still known for those pieces. I think they say even the great masters are really known for like five pieces that they do in their entire career. So you think of Picasso or Leonardo da Vinci, you think of there's like five pieces you really know and love, and you're just like they're the greatest ones. And then you see others that they're good, they're very beautiful. Some of them may be really awesome, but they're not known for those. So that's kind of a hard thing to take, especially when you're in the middle of your career like I am. But yeah, I do believe there is kind of two ways of looking at that. I think it's incumbent. The first one is more incumbent upon us and should motivate us because I think that the double whammy is the mildly talented person that can market really well sells. But what if you're very talented and you market really well? Well, then, bam, you've got two things going for you. So all my talented friends, like that are at the point where they're feeling like they're giving up and everything else, like it's really incumbent upon you to take the rest of that slack and push it. Because I believe that that's really the approach in the end. Like, is it take full responsibility of everything you do every single day. I'm responsible for failing and I'm responsible for succeeding. I take that on so that I don't blame any kind of external factors, even though they might be out there sometimes economically or whatever else it is. But there's always people out there that are looking to buy. There's always people, that will appreciate what you're doing. And even if it's, you don't succeed today, you might be on the road to it tomorrow. You need to have that hopefulness. I mean, for me, my faith is really responsible for a lot of that strength inside. I kind of go, I do all I can here, and I kind of leave it up to however it's supposed to unfold. And I think sometimes, for me, it's my faith. Maybe to other people, it's other spiritual means of doing that, but kind of leaving it open for, you do everything you possibly can, but leaving it open for that opportunity to unfold the way it's supposed to, brings you peace, brings you happiness. You're not trying to micromanage the world, but I think that's the formula, is just kind of, take responsibility in that, and in that, just like Thomas Jefferson used to say, you create your own luck. You put in the work, you work very hard at what you do, luck seems to come to you. And I think that's a way of taking everything we do and, hopefully selling all of it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's very inspiring. I'm just sitting here super inspired the whole time. I love it because I personally I've been feeling quite stuck
Right.
with, the direction that I want to continue with next with my work because,
Sure.
sometimes when you are schooled a lot, it tends to
Hmm.
separate you a lot from yourself in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
Which is why, I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give to someone who is feeling maybe stuck with their work or
Hmm.
stuck with their sales?
I think more than anything, as I said in the previous thing, I think it really does come down to our approach. We all have habits that can bring negative things in our lives. We can do a certain thing every day, or even just the negative approach to life. If we just engage every day with our life, telling us a story about how, oh, I can't make it. I didn't come from an artistic family. I didn't go to a great school. I don't have any money. Um, Basically, all those things are describing my life. I mean, that's where I came from. Didn't come from an artist family. Didn't go to an great art school. Got rejected from an art school that probably would have got me maybe a little farther. And it's funny, I've gotten two students into that school since then that have studied with me. So it's kind of funny to get a little bit of payback. But all of those things, like all those negative things in my life, could have created that person that said, I'm incapable of doing it. And really, so many people are engaged in that first and foremost, is that you have to change your belief system to believe it's at least possible. Like, not know that how it's going to happen or where it's going to happen, but from that early part to just say, okay, I'm willing to believe I can do it. And from there, you'll take steps, but you'll take steps in a different energy. You'll want to take daily habitual kind of moves to advance it further. So maybe it's, you start another social media account and you start doing posts once a day. Maybe it's, you start trying to build up your newsletter list, a couple people a day. You inquire with some people that have been, talking with you on social media, and you want to bring them on to turn them from acquaintances to maybe potential collectors someday. You know, it made successful. If I sit around, I mean, at 30 years into this business, I could sit around and still wait for someone to acknowledge me. I have plenty, even organizations within the realism world, that they haven't crowned me with anything that's given me some wow. I'm so successful now because of you. I made myself successful. I waited for many years for galleries to pick me up. I was rejected by every single one of them, and multiple times. And a lot of them said, I like your work, but it's just not our thing. And I sat and waited and waited and waited. Um, at some point, you really need to just take that responsibility. You need to believe that, and in this world, there's many opportunities through the internet. Social media came around 10, 15 years ago. That was another opportunity. And if you're smart, you'll look at where trends are going and try to catch the next train, because there'll be more and more opportunities going in the future as well. For me, I would say about 7 years ago, I started reading a lot about how important video was. And I determined, I said to myself, I'm not comfortable in front of the camera. I don't really care for any of that kind of stuff. But I need to do it. And I needed to get comfortable after a while and start to be, whether it was learning to talk with people, learning to speak with customers, whatever it was, all those things I didn't want to do, I was telling myself, I'm not a salesman. I'm not a marketer and all that stuff. That got me nowhere. They got me unsuccessful. But if you're willing to at least start entertaining the idea that you can achieve success in this, you can find your own way. You just need to have, you need to take daily steps. It's all about action. It's about belief first, actions, and then at least not trying to beat yourself down when things don't happen overnight. It's like growing a plant. You plant the seeds, you can't harvest the next day. These are all about small things that built what I have today. And whether it was printing out business cards to hand to people, to get people to know who I was, to go and start another social media account here and there and build that up. It's been a progression throughout that time. It's just daily steps every single day. I nurture this my business as it's my fourth child. It has to be nurtured every day. You have to think in terms of the day, how many posts you're going to do, and how are you going to share yourself. If you're just a studio with all this billionaire come and knock on my door and say I want to buy all your art, it's not going to happen. Even at my stage, everybody's Eric Armusik who. You need to get your work out there in front of people, and it's about a progression to that. Take it in chunks and little by little, and it's that repetition, just like Coca-Cola did to get where they are today. And through that, you find your tribe, you find your brand, you learn who you are. I mean, I wrote artist statements when I was a kid, and they were ridiculous. They were just trying to use big words that say nothing,
Yeah.
But throughout 10 years of failure or 20 years, you start to find out who you are. I could write an artist statement quite easily. I know who I am today. I'm happy with who I am. I've succeeded based on that belief and holding true to what I was. And maybe at one time it wasn't successful, but I made it successful. So I think that's the biggest thing is building all of that, and to understand that failure is part of success. I've said it again. It's all part of it. You don't succeed unless you fail. Look at anybody that's ever done anything. And I can't remember the exact quote, but nothing achieved is really great without that sacrifice. If you got everything easy, handed to you like a trust fund kind of thing, would you appreciate it? I wouldn't. And I appreciate every little bit of it. Every painting sale, I'm able to share that with my family and do great things for them and have the life that I love. That's worth fighting for every single day, and that's why I do it. I love getting up on Monday and staying up late. I love this, and anybody can do it too. I'm not some special case. It's how it is, I think.
Wow. Again, very inspiring. And I love
Mhm.
it because the whole idea that, it isn't, it's a lot of people, they think it's like, oh, you're just talented, or oh, you're just
Mhm.
lucky. But
Right,
it's those people who don't realize that it takes work, it takes time. It
right,
isn't, oh, I started yesterday and now I have 500,000 followers and I sell. It takes a while to really do it. And
right.
that ties into the
That's
whole, Dante's Inferno thing, which actually it's one of my favorite, it has one of my favorite quotes, which is that the path to heaven begins in hell. You have to start from like the
right,
bottom and like really go up.
right,
And that takes time and transformation and self-knowledge, and again,
right,
failure, which,
right.
that's how it is. And you've done
It's like
so,
a
so
it's like a
well.
warrior. Like,
Yeah,
thank you, thank you.
you're welcome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I liken it to like almost a warrior getting trained. Like you see all these, scenarios where somebody, a young man, is put in a situation and they go through like a boot camp situation. They, oh, do you want to sleep in? Like all that kind of stuff. They treat them like hell because they're going to encounter it, and they come out of there different people and they're stronger. So any people that are suffering with failure, because trust me, I had plenty of times early in my career, I took paintbrushes, threw them in my studio and closed the door. I was so pissed, like not happy, and I had to get back on the horse and try again.
Yeah.
And I learned that through time. Like every time I see failure, or if I have failure come and something doesn't work out, I tell myself I'm allowed to blow off steam for a short time, but I've got to get back in there. That's
Mhm.
the remedy to get over it, to get
Yeah.
back into that, because with every failure, sometimes are the seeds of success.
Hmm.
And you have to look at it that like if you are feeling at that moment, look at it really well and say, all right, that's how I'm going to get over it, and maybe prevent it next time, and maybe have a different way of thinking this time. Some of my greatest successes have come from bad failures, and that's consistent with the world, from inventors to entrepreneurs all through the world. Um, you're not a special case. We're all going to fail in some way, but you could walk away, or you could go, "Hey, this is where I achieve. I go over."
Yeah.
So sorry, I just figured
No,
I'd interject
you're
that.
good. No, it's beautiful. I love it. And then I wanted to ask you, because of course you have your mentorship program, basically. Um,
Mhm.
do you also have any exhibitions or events or anything coming up that you'd like to promote?
At the moment, as I said, I'm still pretty much locked in with my Dante's Inferno series. I'm hoping to exhibit that. I do have contacts with somebody in Florence about showing that when the entire series is over. It might be even, I haven't announced it, but maybe even at the halfway point, they might want to show it.
Mhm.
It was somebody I was actually involved with before the pandemic. I had two different people. I had somebody in Genoa and in Florence that were interested in showing the work. But I will definitely be showing there. I'm looking to show it somewhere in the United States. I'm hoping to be finished with it in the next 4 years. I've set a goal. As I said, I want to get to the halfway point of the series by the end of this year. But at the same time, I'm again, we'll be putting together a book at the end of this series as well. I'm really not showing my work at the moment, other than this. I have a lot of different painting commissions, like the one that's behind you here, for a number of different churches that I do commission work for. I do many large scale works. So for the most part, that's where I'm at right now. People are seeing a lot more of my studio than seeing my work being exhibited. But I anticipated getting into the beginning of the series that there would be a time off from all of this, and that's fine. I've been doing very well on the outside anyway. The studio has been more filled than ever, and I've had some really great years. But besides that, I've been mentoring students. I have 3 and 5 day individual workshops that I do through my studio, where I work individually with students from all over the world that have come here. At bed and breakfast that's next door, and people stay there and work with me for a whole week. And I also have my online and in-house students that I teach each week for drawing, painting, and art business. So I do a lot of help bringing artists into an approach that will bring them to a thriving point in their careers, whether it's full-time artist or part-time, or even just in retirement, or even as a child, just preparing for what they'll need to get into college. So I constantly taking on new students for all of that, and booking people for the summer at the moment. So it's a
Great.
very busy studio, to say the
Yes.
least.
Yeah, that's awesome though. So if someone wants to be your student, where can they go?
You can go to my website, ericarmusik.com. It's ERICARMUSIK.com. On the homepage, there's some information there, and you could look under instruction, and they'll show you some of the other options that I offer.
Perfect. And do you have any other places where people can see your work?
Just about every social media that's out there, everything from TikTok to Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. I'm on just about everything and post fairly regularly. Got some great community of people there. I really enjoy getting in touch with a lot of people. I try to get back with as many people as I can and comment back, and very happy to support your work as well, and give advice when needed all the time, because I've tried to always have this model that if I ever got somewhere, I was going to be very transparent and try to help as many people as I can, because I didn't feel that same way when I was getting started. So I try to do all I can to at least kind of share the love and pay it forward. And I'm very glad to do so.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so, so much for all this amazing, inspiring advice, Eric.
Thank Thank you, Laura. I appreciate the opportunity. I love BoldBrush and Faso and everything this company does. They do such a great service to artists. So I'm very happy to be part of it.
Thank you so much.